Hi. Hi, everyone. Please take your time to be comfortable. This is supposed to be a formal / informal discussion. I'm really glad. I'm Audrey L'Espérance. I've been a collaborator, a friend of CDTRP for a while now. I'm now based at a school of public administration because I'm a weird political scientist in the room. Actually, I'm researching patient engagement in research in particular. And Sandra, I want to let you begin because you're my partner and people know you already. So I'll let you introduce the activity today.
Okay. And you would think I would be ready for that.
I can introduce it, but
yeah. Well, yeah. Apologize. I had the other presentation up. Yeah, go ahead for now. Well, I'll just start and then you can do the part because I don't want to waste anyone's time. So yes, so those of you who know me, I've been a patient partner with CDTRP since 2014. I was one of the very few people that were there in Montebello. And it's been a pleasure. I really wish I could be there, but circumstances have made it that I can't. But I am healthy, so as best as I can be. I don't have COVID. Yeah, measuring engagement and partnership, the evaluation part is very important. So it's an abstract that I put together, and I'm very thankful that CDTRP has, obviously it's something that they've had on their mind. We looked at it earlier about the importance, and I give full kudos to CDTRP for their patient partner program. It's one of the best I've seen in the work that I've been doing. And so, now's the time to evaluate, see where we are, where we can go. And it's such a pleasure to be able to have Audrey present the work. And it's funny how our circles meet because two of her, I'm happy to be on the board now of Patient Advisors Network, and two of the major patient partners who are like mentors to me, Carolyn Canfield and Mary Ann Lavary, if I don't say, I probably didn't pronounce her name properly, we're involved in this. So I will pass it on to Audrey and she will lead us into where we're going to go tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. So a while ago, Manuel contacted me and he says, hey, there's a patient partner at CDTRP that asked about evaluation of patient engagement and the strategy that was deployed within the CDTRP for the past years. And I've happened to collaborate with many research networks along the years, CDTRP being one, and Chantal being a colleague for a long time, on trying to figure out how we do an evaluation that actually is meaningful and is also a conductor to the patient engagement piece, not just a way of examining and doing an evaluation as a means to be accountable for something that we did, but mostly an evaluation so we can improve the way we partner with patients and make it as a learning cycle for any partner in the engagement cycle. So I'm just going to present to you a bit of the work we've done, and it's a starter for a conversation that I want to have with you today. We always want to know if we're doing the right thing, if we're not tokenistically involving patients in the work and the research we do. It's true for researchers, but it's also true for organizations such as research networks. We also want to make sure that we involve for the right reason. I'm sorry, but like the one thing I've heard the most along the years is that patient partners get involved just for the fun of it, for the sake of traveling to Kelowna, but you're actually doing it so we can transform healthcare and we can transform research. So we're trying to figure out like whether we are transforming something or not. Evaluating can be done for many purposes. We can inform, decisions about, around engagement. So helping people like Manuel do his work better, or, researchers do their work better, but also supporting the co-building within a research network. So making sure we do the right activities at the right time with the right people around the table. But it's also good for funding ways. And so ensuring that we are accountable to funders, but also showing them the type of impact we have as a network, as a community. So there are two questions I want to raise today with you, and it's questions. I don't have answers for them, but one is a question about what are the agreed principles for good patient, family, and donor engagement within CDTRP. Some of you have been with CDTRP for a while now. I know some of you from 2016, 17. Back then I did I facilitated a discussion about, the intentions we had to embark in engagement. It was in Quebec City, and I was with my colleague Sylvain Bédard at the time. And I know some of you were there in Quebec City. So what are the agreed principles you all build your engagement on? What do these engagement principles look like in practice? How do we manage to get them inscribed in the way we do things, in the practices of engagement, in the practices of research too? And finally, what does the transformation we're looking for look like? What would be success like? And we can dream big in this field. So what we need is a framework. It's a framework. It's a blueprint. When we talk about a framework, we think about blueprints. We've been building a house for a while without really knowing exactly what the house looks like. I'm trying with you today to try to actually build that blueprint or draw that blueprint. For each of the research network I've been working with along the years, that blueprint looks a little different. It's always a house. There are always windows and, some sort of structure, but each houses look different. And today is about building the CDTRP house. Frameworks, for those of you who know or don't know about frameworks, you probably have seen some. Those are patient engagement frameworks, actually. They talk about how, what are the principles for engagement, and there are many of them. Some of them are prettier than others, or else that might look more like yours than others. But, a framework is a recipe. It's actually a recipe where you have ingredients, a process of how to mix the ingredients together, and some kind of photo of what the product looks like. So don't think too much ahead, and don't think it's a complicated conversation to have. It's actually to build that recipe together. If you want to do banana bread with me, I would be happy to. But for a starter, there have been work that's been done with, as Sandra was saying, with two incredible patient partners that I now call my friends and mentors in many, many ways. Carolyn Canfield and Marianne Levasseur has been, both of them have been involved in many different areas of healthcare, in medical training at UBC for Callan, for instance, in many different healthcare settings. And they've been really helpful in building a framework for these 18 organizations, all funded by CIHR SPORE, this strategy for patient-oriented research. Actually, all the SPORE-funded entities wanted to build a framework that would actually be a way to compare and to evaluate their patient engagement work. And so we've been fortunate to have them as collaborators, and we've built this model. The model is called Learning Together, and it's interesting because today I've heard Mary Bocage talk about learning. as a way of actually sharing and having a both ways reciprocal relationship. And I think that model really reflects that. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into the details of the methodology that actually helped us build this, but there have been 150 people in many phases of the project involved in building the model, 150 people from coast to coast in Canada that were recruited through the SPOR entities to get to that model. So I'm really grateful for all of these people that gave time and their heart into it. So earlier I was talking about that recipe. And so the first part of the model are the ingredients, what we put in. And sometimes it's things that we need to actually prepare for, think about, put in place, formalize. We can think about, thinking about recruiting diverse perspectives in the work we do, have, clear roles and responsibilities set up, having partnership guidelines for compensation, for instance, make sure that we are ready. And it's interesting because the SPOR model actually talks more about the researcher's readiness. And this is something Marie Chantal and I talked about in 2016-17, because actually the patients were telling us that they were ready to embark in CDTRP research, but researchers were a little bit, worried and more fearful, and they had a little bit more anxiety in embarking. So this model really talks about that readiness and building the readiness within, a community. And then thinking about co-building the project, but not just in doing it, but also planning for it. And finally, appreciation, making sure we have the right manners to appreciate the work and the time that people will spend. These are the ingredients. Those are dimensions, if I use my evaluation, jargon. But within those, there are, operation activities. There are things that are a little bit more precise. Just so you know, today when we discuss, you'll have the lists underneath all of these dimensions. Each dimension open, and you get a little bit more detailed information about what they mean. So for instance, diverse perspective. When we think about diverse perspective, it's mostly about the diversity of knowledge around. It's not necessarily about, the color of your skin but it might be also about your perspective of one specific organ or one experience or journey. So it's that idea that diversity is multiple and can actually comes in many forms, and then so on and so forth. The SPOR community I've worked with, I've listed a bunch of these elements for each of the dimension. You can look at them and be inspired by them, but you might want to add some that are more CDTRP-like. So this is going to be, the discussion today. Another piece, I'm going to go a little quickly. The other piece is the process. So we know that starting a partnership is not a linear way of doing things. What we've heard from participants in the study is that it's mostly like a snakes and ladder kind of thing. You come back and you go a little further. Sometimes you go really fast, and sometimes you have to actually go back on your track. So you see it's a cycle like that, but it's also a reel, so you can actually navigate within. The idea is that all of the elements, all the dimensions are not coming one after the other, but they might actually come back and again until you finish your partnership, your project. So you refine your engagement, you welcome, and this is not just at the beginning of a project, but it's an ongoing thing. You include, and you make sure that inclusion is, an active thing. You recognize the work your partners, and here researchers also do. You improve support and also communicate all the way through. And the mountain on this framework is the transformation we're looking for. We're all looking for a transformation that might not happen tomorrow, but it might happen in years from now. But it's a mountain and the top is quite cool. The first steps is building capacities and transforming our practices, research practices, or even clinical practices. But also refining, research and getting better research. I've heard that a lot during the years we worked on this framework. Better research meaning more ethical research, better retention in clinical trials. We've heard many, many things. And then changing the culture of research and eventually changing the culture in our organization. And of course, again, it's maybe a long time from now, but we have to project ourselves through that. And transforming care and eventually transforming systems. So you see that this mountain is a projection. It's a way of actually thinking a bit like thinking ahead, dreaming, but also making sure we aim. And the aim is a good way to make sure that we analyze what we do now in regards to that transformation we're looking for. Building a research net or a framework like that help us report back to you every year, talking about what you are changing in research projects, but also in the network. It's a way also to recognize and be grateful for the time people are spending, for the work also researchers are putting in building the partnership. So it's a two-way street. It's not just for patient partners, but it's also for researchers and the research network itself. So what we are going to do today, and this is an activity I'm asking you to do with me, we're going to, just separate the group in three groups. Here in the room, we'll just split in two, and then Sandra is going to facilitate a group online because we have people online. And so we were going to be separating the groups with each having one part of the framework in hand. I have handouts so you don't have to look at the screen while we speak. We have papers we can use, and Sandra has the model also. You'll have the full lists of indicators, the little lists inside, so we can also look at them to be inspired. But what the conversation needs to be about is what you think should be the CDTRP model. What are the ways we do things at CDTRP? Manuel, I, and Sandra are going to be facilitating the discussion with the groups, and we have 30 minutes to do that together. And afterwards, we can come back and report back on each element that you think are important. Again, it's a conversation. It's a starter. We don't have to achieve anything today, but it's a good way to actually discuss about what you individually think is the important emphasis we need to put on the engagement work and the partnership within CDTRP. But it's also a way to actually confront ideas and see how people think differently or alike. And so I'm happy we can get to that discussion.
Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful discussion. We're going to start with the reporting back, and we'll start with Sandra. If you can unmute and then report back to the group. We have 5 minutes, Sandra. So I will jump in once the time is done.
Okay, well, I'll be as quick as I can be. We spent a little bit of time on the first part because we got everyone's input, but definitely on the building capacity, we were very interested in number one, improving understanding, and we also thought that the networking, when we're talking about community development and building relationships and getting more people at the tables, we really thought that was really important. And then some of the things that we talked about go into other sections, but I'll bring it up here. Being able to keep up with capacity. So sometimes patient partners can they're not always available depending on their other commitments or their health. So how do we keep them updated? And like Sodito and the communication team at CDTRP does an excellent job of any time research has been done, we get a summary of that. But also having things more digital. So when Patricia talked yesterday about having more of the research available online with our patient portal will be excellent. And then also too, we really want to be brought in when the question's being determined in the research. So we got to go back to the priorities that we set in 2015 for what the community wants. And I think it's important too to even build on those to see if we're on the right page. And please bring us in at the beginning of the studies. We appreciate what researchers do, but getting a review of something that's already been prepared, as my friend Julie Drury said, we don't want to be coming when the cake's being put in the oven or the banana bread in this case. We want to be there when the mixtures are being done. And then also too, a lot about budgeting for remuneration. We really thought it was important. There's mixed feelings about this, but I think when we get to a patient partnership level, that we're equal partners that bring our lived experience, and our lived experience is an invaluable asset that is necessary in research. And most researchers that I've worked with were like, wow, we never thought about that, or you really bring a good perspective to this. And then when we went on to transforming practices, we definitely thought that, we went into what I just said. And then refinding research, again, making sure it's relevant, and really emphasis on knowledge translation in a way that is in, we refer to it as layman terms, but in a format and accessibility for not only your patient partners, but the general public. We need people to know what we're doing and what's being done. And especially for those that are, on dialysis or just recently being diagnosed or thinking about being an organ donor, we need to get that research out to them. And then when we talk about changing culture, yes, definitely the importance of patient-oriented research. I don't think we need to talk much to CDTRP about that. They already value that. We did put all the things that were there that we thought that they were important, but we also thought that, so sorry, I was changing culture. Changing culture, yeah, we definitely need to, but I really think that we're on the road to do that. Transforming care, we definitely thought that the top three that were there: patient experience, quality of care, patient safety, and we definitely wanted to add health equity. Is very clear that anything to do with EDI, it needs to be front and center. It needs to be right across everything that we're doing within CDTRP. And also the other thing I wanted to point out too as well, when it comes to patient safety, don't just think about, the harms that could happen. Think about the mental impact that has when a patient shares their story. They're reliving that trauma. It's hard for a donor family to share their experience, or even a living donor that, is so impacted, or even us who have been through life-changing events where we've almost passed away. Sometimes we say it's so like, I had the transplant, wow, right? But it's like, when we have to share those stories, it does re-traumatize us, and leave space for that and acknowledge that. And like, maybe take a moment to pause and to thank people for sharing their story. And then the last part on the improving,
Sandra,
I'm done.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
have to conclude, I think, the session, because people in here are, making me signs. No, I'm
worries. Go ahead,
mentioning that. But thank you. That's great. And the thing I was listening to you, and the thing I know can go up the CDTRP mountain is that one transplant for life quote that actually is the goal, the ultimate goal, not just for researchers, but also for patient partners and family members involved in the CDTRP. I've heard tons of really interesting things from my group. I know Manuel had, a really great conversation also. We don't have much time to share these things, but I will make sure to, come back to you with kind of this model of what, we've heard today, what we can do it. We have 5, yay. Okay. So let's do it. Sorry. I thought we were up. So maybe someone from the ingredient group want to come in and maybe just report back on some of the ideas. You don't have to go through all of them, but just on some of the ideas and the discussions you had in your group.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that, by the way.
Well, I guess I should stay this way. Okay. So I just want to say that the overall theme in our group that really was emphasized was the voice.
Yeah.
And having the PFD's voices from the very beginning of a research project or whatever the project is, that was the main emphasis. And from the different diverse areas and stuff like that. So the first one we talked about was budget and orientation and reimbursement. I'm not going to go over the points. I'm just going to share what we talked about. So the recognition and having a say with the different views in terms of every individual that's a part of it, all the PFDs, they come from different backgrounds. Either they're working or they're not working, they have families. You all have to look at that perspective from each individual person because we are individuals. We do have other lives, and supporting that narrative, I think, helps us to realize that our voices do matter and that we do have a say and an impact when it comes to participating in whatever the research study is or the paper or the what have you. And a form of expense in terms of a form of an expense actually does contribute and support that person, again, if they're working or whatnot, because you do have to take time off of work. Those that aren't financially supported, that helps them to be able to support and help in terms of childcare and whatnot. They can actually put money towards that and actually give their voicing their time to support. Equity and again, the diverse populations. So PDFs providing other types of information, experiences from their own professional background, because again, we're not only a patient, we're not only a living donor, but we also have different roles in what we do and how we support the community. And we also have different connections as well when it comes to our social networks. And that's how we can bring that to you guys as well in a different aspect. So that's the first one. Our second one, number 2, was project and co-design. And if I missed anything, please, my group, please speak up because this is a group effort. Just FYI. So project and co-design. So depending on the project and how that includes the PFDs. So we would love to say yes to everything, but it is hard for all of us to say no. And so recognizing that we can say no and that we can safely say that without guilt, we think comes a very long way. So having that first and foremost said to everybody when they first join, I think is really important. Communication is key. Some have indicated that when they first joined, they joined and then there was no communication. They were silence. So having constant communication, and I would like to say this on behalf of all of us. I would hope that Manuel has been amazing in communicating, and he's awesome. He's always, went the extra mile. So I'd like to put in 5 stars for him for that. So thank you.
That's an evaluation point.
And also knowing that we do add a personal touch. Each PFD has their own personal way of understanding and communicating and speaking, and that we're all very unique and different in that as well. One of our amazing PFDs also mentioned on getting to know us personally. So Google searching and knowing the person from a different lens. Also getting in touch in terms of group conversation. So having one of the researchers said having coffee sessions in terms like once a month and getting to know each person individually and more on a personal level. Because again, we're more than just kidney, we're more than just heart, liver, lungs, etc.
No, you are. I'm just joking. Just joking.
Almost done. Number 3 was roles. So looking at patients and understanding the different expectations that we have. And again, the commitments, I've already mentioned that, full-time, part-time work, etc. Real quickly, again, patients. Oh, I guess I jumped the gun in terms of roles. They all interconnect in terms of our perspectives. The roles, the priorities, the interests, the result. Oh, finding the results.
Yeah.
So whenever we provide our voices, we would like to know what the results are from that research, from that initiative, and knowing when we can disconnect as well as patient partners and how we're treated. A few of us have been treated differently in terms of our perspectives as well. So making sure it's commonality amongst that voice. Growing the networks, obviously we can support with that. Connecting with the younger population, the younger demographic. So we did talk about, one of our caregivers did mention how she puts this on her resume, that she has supported the PFDs in different lenses and how that helps her grow in her professional perspective. So this would be great to connect with the younger population, how this can help them in terms of job interviews, in terms of university applications, and that perspective. And then lastly, diverse perspectives. One of our researchers, or one of our doctors, mentioned those that have the voices that don't want to share because they had bad experiences in the hospitals. That is a really, really good perspective to hear from.
Yeah.
The skeptics, the ones where we can improve more on. So I thought that was very interesting. So we have more. It'll be emailed to you.
Thank you.
Great job, Sadia.
Anyone from my group wants to share 1 or 2 points? Sean. Oh yeah. Thank you so much.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Sean.
Yeah, so I think there's a number of themes that resonated across all 3 groups, so I won't get into those.
Yeah.
I think everybody wants to be there from the outset of a project, not, as you said, Sandra, well into the baking process. We were spent a bit of time talking about safety of the entire team, really, not just the patient partner, but everyone on it, having good rules and guidelines in place. I think there was also some discussion about making sure that it's a good match. Not every patient partner, just because you had a kidney transplant, is the right person to be on a certain project. So making sure that there's a good process for making use of not just your patient partner skills, but also many, as was said, some of you are researchers in your own right. Some of you are, health policy people, or whatever the case is. You bring all those perspectives and you can help fill out a project further. Importance of role definition from the outset and also throughout the project is going to be key. Every person is multifaceted, so recognize that just because you checked off a box that I had a kidney, or Mary was Indigenous, we brought a whole life of other experiences and traumas and everything else that came with it. I think the other one that resonated for me was also recognizing this is pretty new to a lot of researchers. So not every researcher who's been doing this for 30 years, doing bench research and things like that, maybe appreciated or now understands, why did CIHR put this as a checkbox on my research application? And how do I make use of this person now? That wasn't part of my training. And so I think there is a 2-part education process too there, of how can we as PFDs be effective members of a team, but conversely, there's an entire process that needs to happen so that those who are doing research, whether it's bench research or social research or policy research, doesn't matter, know how to enter into these, social contracts with patients and partners when they've had an entire career not doing that. Heather, Patricia, anybody, any other big themes you want to make sure come out as my glasses fog up? Oh, the other one, I think it resonated for me because I said it. Was making sure that, like I said, that it's not a checkbox. If you're going to include a patient partner, because we'll know in the first 10 minutes if we were there as a token, and that we were just checked off, and that actually is probably more damaging than not including a patient partner in the first place.
Yeah. Just gonna put my mask off. I want to, conclude, but just by first saying thank you. Thank you, because what you just, discussed is my field of research. It's my interest. Without people like you bringing their time to research and researchers willing to actually partner with patients and family members, I wouldn't have a field of research. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful also to that you trusted the process enough to actually share everything you just shared today. But also for Sandra for agreeing to partner with me in this and being that facilitator online. I know it's not an easy thing to do. What I can tell you for next steps. So this is not just a conversation we're having in Kelowna that will stay in Kelowna. It's a conversation we want to bring into a project about what we can report on the history of CDTRP, what happened since 2014, I think, onwards. But because we have information, we have gathered, Chantal Fortin gathered information through the years. I remember like interviewing some of you along the years. If you remember me meeting with you, I know Heather, we talked a while ago with the team, and so we will report back on what happened, what you grew into as a research network, but also building a way for CDTRP to keep track and report back on these elements that are important to you. And I think that the main point I see, and you've actually saw it during the conversation, is that you've seen my model. It's all different little lists, but they all actually speak to one another. When you retribute or appreciate the work, you also recognize the work. And this is just a journey of engagement. And this is going to be what we want to build, is like a conversation about what you bring to the research and what the research bring you. And so every element we discussed today, we will try to have that reciprocity in it and that shared learning. I can already tell you that we'll see each other again. And thank you again for participating and discussing. See you soon. Bye online.
Thank you.